Hi, I'm Don DeBar. Maxine Lawrence and I are going to bring you an interview with the village trustee candidates in the Village of Ossining elections. I'm with Ann M. Perrin, who's a candidate for village trustee in the Village of Ossining. Hi, Ann. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're in the last days of the campaign now. How's it going?
It's going very well. Last Thursday night, the League of Women Voters sponsored a debate for the candidates, and we were able to exchange our ideas and our concerns at the community center. There were several residents there from the community, and it's been aired on cable television several times. I certainly hope the public is watching.
Yeah, me too. I think it's good for them to get an idea of what's really going on in the village. Did you have any problems or any interesting tidbits that came out of the debate with your opponents?
Well, I've known my opponents for many years now, and what I seemed to be distressed about at the debate was that they seemed to avoid the questions that came at them and spent a lot of the time applauding what they have done for the village over the past 2 years, rather than to deal with the problems that the residents came up and voiced their concerns that night at the debate. I found they avoided them and moved around circles, and they didn't quite come to the answers that the residents wanted to hear.
What do you think were some of the things they were trying to avoid?
I think they were trying to convey the concerns about the racial tensions in the village of Ossining. When we had gone to the editorial endorsement board, one of the first questions that the editors had asked us was concerning the racial tensions, and the present mayor stated that he felt there were no racial tensions in the village of Ossining. And when the endorsements came out in the newspaper, they addressed that and said that he floundered with that statement, and he really needs to move forward and discuss what really is going on in the village.
It was interesting. Last night I was at a village board work session. Last night being the 27th of October. And at this work session, there was a little dispute that took place. Unfortunately, not in front of the camera. There was no camera covering the work session. They don't cover work sessions. The ones that the mayor said at the debate were so widely known about by the public. Anyway, in front of myself and 4 or 5 other people and the other members of the board, Penny Markowitz Moses and Ernest got into a little spat because Penny had pulled out an envelope she laid on the table and started passing out blue ribbons to the board members and said, "I would appreciate it if you would all wear these to show support and solidarity with our police." And there was some discussion back and forth between them, rather heated, and it went for a few minutes, and unfortunately this will probably never see the light of day and never see television, well, until now, never see television or the newspapers. Was that kind of tension evident the night that you guys had the debate in front of a full house and TV cameras?
Well, it's funny you should mention that. As you know, I'm a nurse in the community, and I work nights now. And when I came home this morning, there was a message on my recorder from a resident who had called me. When I called the resident back, they went over this incident that had happened. And what I find it quite appalling that the sitting trustee, Penny, would try to hand out blue ribbons in support of the police department, when in essence I don't really believe they have supported the police department or answered the community's concerns. I think it's insulting to the community that they would put these bans on to support the police department when they themselves, the board has been privy to the information from the grand jury findings, but the village residents have not. And I feel that this is just a blue Band-Aid, if you wish, approach to the subject, the problem that it really is in the village.
Yeah, that sounds like an appropriate remark.
It's from a nurse, of course.
Yeah. In yesterday's Gannett paper, yesterday being, again, Tuesday, the 27th of October, there was an article about a pending law that, strangely enough, will be voted on, or at least a public hearing will be held for it the day after Election Day. The subject law will be to insulate the village board members against any punitive damages that may arise to them for members of the audience. In the event of a lawsuit by some damaged or aggrieved party against the village because of something that is alleged to have been done by the village, if there is ordinary negligence, basically if the village board makes a mistake and somebody suffers as a consequence, they're entitled to go to court and ask the court to award them damages, which is basically to make them whole for what they've suffered. In the event, however, that there's behavior that's so outrageous or illegal behavior made by the board, the court has the discretion in a case like that to award punitive damages, basically to punish the parties that committed these acts to discourage other parties from doing this. Now, as it stands, In the event the individual board members are sued individually for an ordinary error or act that causes someone damage, a pothole or such a thing, even if those individuals are sued, the village will defend them in court, and in the event there's a judgment against those individuals, the village or their insurance company will pay, so the board members don't have to go into their own pockets. As it also stands now, in the event they commit some stupid or horrible act individually as board members that results in some damage to someone, the aggrieved party can sue them individually and recover, what they've suffered and punishment from these individual board members. In other words, they could sell the mayor's deli and pay the person that's sued rather than have the village pay for stupidity or gross negligence or bad faith on the part of board members. They want to change this, and this is going to come up at a public hearing the day after Election Day. What do you think of this?
Well, I think, as we all know, that cliche that hindsight is 20/20. My first question I have to pose is, since the mayor has been on the board for the last 14 years, why now are they trying to enact this law? Is there something that they have done? As far as I'm concerned, punitive damages are awarded for gross misconduct on the part of the board. And is there something that they have done or are about to do in perhaps the revitalization of the waterfront that they're concerned is going to be considered gross misconduct? What I have questioned publicly, and I'll state again, there was a business in the village of Ossining at the waterfront, an established business with several employees, that the village board came through and railroaded that business out. I questioned this at the editorial endorsement board, and the mayor's comment was, well, yeah, 7 or 8 people have lost their jobs, but things like that happen when you're trying to move forward. My understanding is the municipalities have the right to declare eminent domain for a specific purpose. If they intended to put a water filtration plant, or they intended to put some sort of a health facility in that specific area where that business was, then eminent domain is legal in that position. However, what they have done is declared eminent domain, given this business 1/3 the market value of what it is worth, and declared eminent domain in case we're going to develop down here, which I believe is illegal. The other question I think we have to ask the mayor is, if the State Highway Department decided to widen Route 100 in Millwood and came through and took out the parking lot in the front of his business in Rockies and said to him, oh, you got to go, we'll give you 1/3 of what you're worth, I wonder if his comment would be the same, well, it's for the good of the village, and I can understand that.
That's interesting. I wonder what would happen. Also in the Gannett paper, this being the Wednesday, October 28th edition, there was an article about all of the candidates, and I thought it was an interesting one. It had more information, at least they quoted you this time, and one of the things that they discussed, and basically was made to appear like it was an issue, was the fact that you haven't filed any financial disclosures. Could you comment on that?
I'd be very happy to comment on this. I believe running for office is a very grueling and just a long, drawn-out procedure. What the people go through when they decide to run, aside from the financial impact of this decision, it's tremendous amount of time away from their personal lives and their family. I got involved in the political parties probably in the 80s when Joe Caputo was the mayor, and I worked with him hand in hand through his campaigns. He felt when it was time that my children were old enough and I could handle more of a commitment that it was time that I run, and I did. Now, my first political time that I had run, it was it just opened my eyes to see what happened in the village. My oldest child was away at college at that time, and I was receiving in the middle of the night harassing phone calls between the hours of 1 a.m. and 5 a.m., which I had to receive. They were collect phone calls because I was afraid it was my child in school. And when I would pick the phone up and I would accept the charges, I would get hammerings into the phone, whistles being blown into the phone. And then several days after, well, I received at that time also 18 magazine subscriptions and the bills that followed in my name to my home, not ordered by myself. In the days that followed the campaign, when it was over, I received a call on a Saturday morning and was told to go check my tires. And when I went out, my 4 tires were slashed on my car in my driveway.
Really?
Now, next door, my car was a 6-year-old vehicle at the time, and next door was parked a brand new Cadillac and across the street an Audi. So they targeted me, and hanging from my son's basketball hoop that was by my car were Halloween ornaments hung by the neck, hung in effigy over my car.
Oh,
The second campaign that I entered
rough
into,
trade.
my husband was the receiver of 8 magazine subscription, and pornographic books arrived at the house, plus all the bills. So I think when I say that I think campaign, the expenditures, there needs to be a total reform in this. I believe everyone needs to start out on a level playing field, which is not the case. Usually by the time you've become a career politician, it's very engrossed and it's entrenched, and you owe people and they owe you, so big monies are passed back and forth. I personally believe that the residents are tired, and rightfully so, to be all the time being called and asked for donations for this. And basically what it boils down to is, if you give me money for my campaign, then in turn I'm going to do something for you when the need arises. And I do not approve of this. So this campaign, I decided I would neither solicit nor expend any money on this campaign. I feel that all of this campaign that we need to do, yeah, thank you. Wait a minute, I'll be ready. Okay, I'm ready. All of the campaign advertising that needs to go on can be done on public television, as done here, and in the newspapers. Unfortunately, the newspaper that is the primary paper for our village is one-sided and doesn't usually give accuracies when it comes to issues. I had been to the candidates' editorial review board. 6 of us walked in, spent an hour and a half with the editors, asking their questions, answering their questions, and when the article came out, I was not quoted. I faxed a letter to them and said to them, how could this have happened? 6 people walk into a room, 5 are quoted, 1 is not. Oh, she said, what a mistake. Your comments must have been inadvertently cut out by the layout editor. And I said, how convenient, considering I was the only one of the 3 of us that went in, our ticket, that had any background in this. So it was very convenient that they cut it out. Put my comments in the next day in the middle of a page in a corrections column not pertaining to a thing. So it's obvious they don't want the residents to know both sides of every discussion. And I have to question, is it because maybe these career politicians advertise in these papers, and perhaps the papers do a little, okay, we'll give back to you what you give to us?
Well, what's interesting about that also is I happen to work in White Plains and sometimes in Yonkers and around Westchester County, and so even though I buy the local, it's not really quite so local anymore, but the local Gannett paper to Ossining, I also get to read, say, the White Plains paper today, the Old Herald Statesman, the Yonkers paper tomorrow, maybe the Carmel one the day after, and look at the endorsements that, for different offices. And out of maybe 30 endorsements that I've seen so far, with 2 exceptions, and I think maybe the incumbents are dead there, they always endorse the incumbents. And one wonders why.
Well, I'd like to comment also on that, because as I said, I've been to many editorial endorsements, and when I went in this time with my 2 running mates, I commented to them, now remember, don't be nervous, when you go in there you'll understand that these endorsements are already written out and our names are not on them. What I have done for the village when I served on the board, they have never commented on the newspaper. I was involved with the community, I served on 4 boards, I chaired a 5th committee. I was out nightly with the residents. I came forward with the Child Safety Zone Legislation Act. I came forward with a needle disposal plan for the village and hopefully the Westchester County. None of this has ever been credited to me. So it's amazing to sit down and see they don't always endorse the incumbents. They endorse not only the incumbents, but those running on the incumbent ticket who have absolutely no background whatsoever in the village, because they feel, oh, this is going to move the village forward. And if you look at the endorsement this year, they stated in there that the mayor was not aware of any racial tensions in the village. He floundered and he needs to address this. However, they feel that they should be given the opportunity to remain on the board to see the progress through that they have started.
Okay. I guess the short answer to the last question was that after speaking with the Board of Elections, in fact, because you're not accepting any donations and not making any expenditures, that there is no filing required.
I have to make no filing whatsoever, and the comment was good for you.
Well, this is really the wrap of this. I'd like to thank you for coming on, and good luck on Election Day.
Well, thank you very much, and I'd like to say that the Village of Ossining is moving forward, and as much as they criticize and say that I have criticized their going forward, I think it's wonderful that we need to move forward, but I think I would like to state publicly, any board could have moved forward at the rate this board is moving forward. But the majority of the boards like to sit down and think about what the village of Ossining can really handle. And right now, this village is in more debt than ever, $25 million in debt and climbing, because they are buying every property that goes on the real estate market, taking it off the tax rolls. No, we're not receiving revenues from this. And I think, as I said, any board could make this progress, but the majority of them sat back and thought the village of Ossining cannot really handle all these bills. This board does not seem to be having that as a prime concern. Their priorities are different.
Yep, I agree with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cool.
We're off?
Very good.